Hello, welcome back to Youthology on AK Radio, brought to you by Attentive Social Enterprise every two Wednesdays of the month from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. I am your host, Ruth, and I've also got as a co host,
Forever.
and one of our guests is.
Ben Sturge.
So we've got another guest on the phone, but he's going to come in a bit later. Sova, do you want to say hi just to let us know that you're here?
Hi, my name's Sovab. I'm a youth ambassador for Attentive.
Yeah, thank you. So, Ben, do you want to kind of tell us what you're about, introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I guess the short and condensed version is I'm an ex-offender that's turned my life around through different business and personal development, and now I leverage the lived experiences that I've got to support others to do the same thing.
Yeah, fantastic. We're gonna learn a bit more about that later on.
Yeah, so you said that you've been able to leverage two different businesses. So that means you're really entrepreneurial. Do you kind of know where that came from?
I guess I grew up in quite financially difficult circumstances, so you learn to be very resourceful from a young age, and there's a lot of transferable skill sets that you might learn by being a young person in that environment that you can leverage later on in life.
Yeah, I think many people can relate to that as well. Being young and not in ideal situations, but then it leads you to stuff that you have to survive and kind of.
Seems like it more and more every day. It's tough times out there. People
It
think
is.
that their options are limited when actually they're not. You've just got to look within to what you've got and use it for the right reason.
Wise words, wise words. And can you tell us a bit about your experience about being an ex-offender, how that led you into your first business? I guess?
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first.
Also.
It's crazy because people are only really recognised for the businesses that do well. But it's kind of really worth mentioning all the fails that you have until something does work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's not often touched upon because that's not where the glory sits, is it? But that's where you learn the best lessons. That's where you learn what to tweak and change and, do to get things right. So, as I said, I'm an ex-offender. So I was arrested and sent to prison. When I'd got to prison, at that time in my life, the business that I had on the outside was carpentry, property maintenance, and renovations and stuff like that. So I used to look after a lot of properties for different letting agents and estate agents and kind of do the refurbishments and the maintenance and the upkeep on them. And I'd have a team of guys that would go out and work for me doing the bits and pieces that I couldn't do. Part of having that business, I was established in neighbouring towns as well as my hometown. So I had different offices as such in different areas. So they all had their own unique telephone numbers dependent on the area code for where the business came from, which didn't seem like such a big deal at the time. But when I'd got sentenced and put into prison, there was a real issue around the cost of telephone calls for the prisoners staying in contact with their friends and family. They was being overcharged, sometimes up to 80 pence a minute to call a mobile phone. And it was understanding the telecoms systems and networks because of my business on the outside that triggered something in my mind and led me to investigate that a little bit further, because there was a real niche in the prison system around the cost of the calls, and it was a big problem for everybody. And normally where there's a big problem, there's a great business opportunity. So I found a solution to that problem and launched a telecoms network, Phone Savvy.
That's incredible. So what was it like launching and scaling a business like you mentioned? What was it like doing it when you just got out? Were there any serious difficulties, any stigmas you had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, to take it right back, you don't just come out and launch a business. There's a lot of pre-planning and thought that's gone into it. So I'd wrote 18 business plans in myself. Phone Savvy was the first one. and I pulled it apart, shredded it, and put it back together so many times because I knew when I got out, I really needed to get this business working because my business around property maintenance and construction was under a lot of pressure because I wasn't around to run it. I'd lost staff and things like that. So I knew when I come out and I went into the world of telecoms, it had to move and it had to move quick. So I tried to arm myself as best as possible in the preparation stages. So I got everything lined up, ready for the release and ready for the launch. You ask what kind of barriers in that I experienced, I think was the question. As well as all the standard stuff of, you know, being an ex-offender and having to rebuild trust within the community and the people that you need to work with, there was other obstacles as well. Obviously, my business from launching, within 3 months, I had it in every single prison, England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And it was having quite an impact on the profit margins of BT and the likes at the time, in the prison sector at least anyway. So they indirectly caused me a lot of difficulty and adversity around launching the business. And there was a lot of issues around concerns over security and stuff like that. One of the things that comes to mind was a lot of the customers were having problems getting the service authorised by the prisons initially because they saw it as a security threat. And the reality was it actually enhanced security and it put another layer of security in place. So I knew this and it was blatantly obvious once I'd been given the opportunity to explain it. But getting that opportunity, being able to get in front of the right people and have that conversation, you know, it took a very long time and it was very, very difficult.
So how long did it take you to kind of get in front of the right people?
I guess, like I said, because of the pure determination whilst I was in prison that I knew I was going to make this work and I'd prepared myself well, I managed to get established and scale and roll out quite quickly. So the key to good business is being a good disruptor, and I well and truly disrupted that telephones network within the prison system. And by disrupting it, you create conversations with people. They're not always the right conversations initially. Sometimes, you know, they want to put a stop to what you're doing or they want to find out a bit more about it. You've got to look out for people that are trying to rip off the concept and, you know, competition and that kind of thing. But also there's people that are genuinely curious to how you've gone about it and done it. You know, it's not typically a well-trodden path to go to prison and launch a national prison telephone network. So when you do it, it's inspiring for some people. And you never really know when you're talking to somebody where their agenda really sits. Are they coming with good intentions or not? And you've got to kind of find that out. So it took a long time to work out who were the right people to talk to and who wasn't. And obviously, the nature of going to prison, trust is a big issue. You don't really put a lot of trust into people. And on a personal level, I had to do a lot of self-development and self-work within myself to get to a place where I could trust again, to have those open conversations, because you think everybody's going to rip your business off. So yeah, it took realistically probably a good 3.5 years before I got to a point where the resistance stopped temporarily. And then it came back because the business was scaling, it was doing well, it was playing havoc with the staff within the prisons because all of a sudden their workload had like doubled and tripled and quadrupled because everybody was using the service. But again, through the preparation stage, I preempted that these things might happen, and we built a strategy in that kind of counteracted some of that and supported the prison service. So it got to a stage where I'd spend a lot of my time training prison staff on the service so they had a better understanding of it to reduce their workload, and then things just got a bit easier from there.
Yeah, makes sense. You got to a higher high and then the issues that come with it Yeah, and then you're able to navigate that.
I think it's actually crazy that you were able to think about that before it actually happened. You said you did predict it from when you were planning during the planning stages. You knew that things like this would happen.
Well,
and you were able to.
the secret is
Yeah.
we all know a lot of negative people, and we
Yeah.
can all be pessimistic at times.
Okay.
So if you write a good business plan, the first thing you've got to do is be as negative as you can be about it and find all the reasons why it won't work. And then create strategies to patch those holes. Because then when it comes to launching, if these things surface, you've got something ready for it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then you've had an easy day.
Smart.
That's crazy.
If you're listening and you want to go into business, take notes.
Yeah, be negative.
To a degree.
To a degree. When
Yeah.
you're starting. Obviously believe in your product. But
Yeah. Okay, one other thing I wanted to ask you. So it says that after selling your business, you then studied psychology.
Yeah, so
Psychology.
it actually goes back a lot earlier than that. I've always had an interest in behaviour, how people's minds work, and stuff like this. When you're in prison, you see the common denominators all the time for why people have ended up in prison.
Yeah.
And everybody gets very fixated on the offence or the incident that put them in prison in that particular moment. But quite often, it's a lot deeper than that, and it goes back a lot further. You know, everyone likes to band it around and say, you know, it's early childhood traumas and stuff. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's circumstantial, it's environment, it's, you know, many, many different things. But the whole concept around helping people is something that I've always been very passionate about. Launching a telecom service to support people in prison was an equal sized driver to the financial gain that I knew could have been created. So to understand people better, you want to dig into why people's mindsets are the way they are and what triggers them to think a certain way and stuff like that. So I spent, a hell of a lot of time invested in, quite deep academic books and stuff around sort of psychology, mindset, behaviours, and that kind of thing. And I think when I was released from prison, having the opportunity to go back into prisons and be kind of like an alumni or an ambassador for different programs, you're coming up against these people again. But now there's even more of a drive to want to help them because they're presenting with business plans, asking for your help and your support. And actually, to be able to help them, you've got to go back a bit further and say, we'll put the business plan down for a minute and let's look at you. Let's look at how you've presented today. Let's look at the language you use. Let's look at what put you in prison. It's a lot deeper.
Yeah.
So to be able to truly help them people, you've got to invest time and training in the whole mindset and psychology of how people behave the way they do.
Yeah, interesting. I think psychology is one of those things that everyone should kind of like look into even a little bit because it's so interesting once you dig into it. But you said that you're reading a lot about, psychology, different books. What was your favorite book?
Oh, there's been many over the years. I mean, there's some that are like the common ones that everybody sees kicking around the wings. There's things like Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
So mammoth, but
I'm really repelled by that book. I don't know why. It
really
just sounds like how to subdue your enemies. I don't know the book.
It's interesting you say that because everybody assumes that there's a negative twist when you try and understand how people's minds work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be used for bad, does it?
Yeah.
So 48 Laws was a big one. Then it was the 50th Law, 50 Cents edition, when he done a collaboration with Robert Greene. That was very good. But there's very many different books. Outwitting the Devil, a lot of the Napoleon Hill stuff. We could talk about this for days, but there's so many different areas to mindset and psychology that you look into different areas. People that have had fascinating stories, people like Eckhart Tolle, there's many examples. Many.
I can imagine.
You take the snippets.
Yeah, you take whatever you can use.
Yeah.
And you use it.
And you learn from there.
Yeah, amazing. What was I going to ask? There was another question about psychology that I wanted to ask you, but when it comes back to me, we shall go back to it. So that was a bit on Ben Sturge, a bit of an introduction about who you are, and where you come from. We're gonna move on to our second guest now, Swavab, who's over the phone. Swavab, do you wanna kind of give us an intro of who you are?
Of course, yeah. So a little bit more about me. I'm also a Year 12 student, and I do attentive on the side as an extracurricular. As a youth ambassador, I'd say one of my biggest roles is to help out with other events and also publish articles. I'd say those two are the biggest things we can do. So most recently, Attentive is hosting an event called Expressions, which is all about promoting violence against women and how it should be tackled. And that's happening on the 5th of April. I helped out making a few posters for that as well. And on the side, I've also been tasked writing a few articles. And I think as a youth ambassador, you do get quite a lot of choice as in what you want to do. You do create a lot of material for Attentive. So it can range from making presentations to making posters, but they're all very useful. And you learn quite a few skills as well. You learn like how to use different types of software and whatnot. And I find it all very helpful. And especially the in real life events, I find them really enjoyable as well. Attending a lot of youth conferences, they're probably the most fun part of the job, I'd say. And I reckon the reason that inspired me to get into Attentive was because they'd visited my school a few years back, and I was quite inspired by what they did. Their style of teaching us and their style of presentation was quite different from other companies that had visited us, and they left quite an impact. And so a few years later, I rediscovered them online and decided to apply and got in.
Thank you. So in terms of like the projects that you're doing with Attentive and stuff like that, I mean, you did touch upon Expressions, but outside of Attentive and the sixth form, you mentioned that you are a Year 12 student. So how do you kind of manage your time, balancing both?
It can get quite difficult at times, but one of the things I'm most thankful for is definitely how flexible Attentive schedule is. It's quite easy to communicate with my mentor or with other members of the team if I need to meet with them and schedule a time when we can call that fits for both of us. So from usually when I wake up to around 4:30, I'm at school, and then I head home. And if there's any extra work, I usually do it in the evening. That's when I prioritize my time for any extracurricular work or revision. And that's the sort of schedule I stick to. I sometimes what I like to do is I try to do all my schoolwork on one day, and the next day I'll finish all my extracurricular work. It is a little bit difficult organizing my time around it, but it's definitely not impossible. And I like to keep my weekend reserved so I can have as much free time as possible so I can relax as well.
Yeah, relaxing is important. You can get that free time in and sleep. Most important.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. You've already kind of touched up on what sparked your interest with Attentive. Now, how do you think working with Attentive has impacted your perspective on youth issues?
I feel like Attentive has sort of given me a deeper insight into what actually happens in Luton. And I know that seems like a simplified answer, but it's not often that you get reminded about what sort of interventions are actually put in place, or what sort of youth groups are open, or what sort of plans are set in place so that you can actually help the youth. Especially in high school, it was definitely something that I wasn't as aware of. I knew there were things, but I didn't know how to access them necessarily. And so working with Attentive has really helped me to understand and get a better insight and perspective on Luton and sort of how they help around, what Attentive specifically does. So, for instance, the interventions that they do within schools and colleges, I believe that's something that's really helpful.
Thank you for that, Swabab. That was a really insightful introduction, and we will kind of circle back on that in a bit. In the meantime, we're going to go back to Ben. Ask. So you said that you did kind of dig deep into why people go into get into prison or get into crime and stuff like that. So what kind of patterns did you find?
I think, there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but especially in the UK, and I've had the fortune of going with my partner over to Norway and looking at a different comparable to sort of justify this. But I think in the UK, from personal experience as an ex-offender, but also as somebody that's gone back into support, a lot of the crimes are financially driven, which obviously takes you to a place where poverty plays a really big part in it, disadvantage. Sometimes that disadvantage, it might not be financial, but it might be perceived limited access to resources. So if you grow up in an environment where you feel like you're not getting any opportunities for a better life, you take what you see as the low-hanging fruit at the time, and that might not always be a good path. You later on realise, even more so when you work in the space, that was mindset also, because if you really wanted it, there was opportunities out there, but you had to look under rocks and behind hedges. It weren't going to be right in front of your face. But no one's there to guide you, which brings you to another reason why people go to prison: lack of positive role models, whether that be through parents, peers, whoever.
Crazy. I mean, I'm not an expert out there, but seeing that I'm a young person going through this economy as it is of right now, and how everyone is struggling, do you think it would play a role into? Do you think people will be more like inclined to go into crime and stuff like that nowadays?
Yeah, do you know what? I don't think we need to skirt around it. I think the facts speak for themselves. When society breaks down and economies are under pressure, crime rates do rise. That's evidenced and well evidenced for very obvious reasons. But the point I always try to make is, even though that is always an option, there is always another option. Sometimes you've got to look a bit further to find it.
Yeah, sometimes you may just need help for someone to help find the option. So.
If I can be really honest with you, I made good money once upon a time doing things that I shouldn't have done. And I lost it very, very quickly because I should never have really had it. But then when I applied myself to my true purpose, helping people and adding value into the world and doing things to support, I made money that I didn't think you could make. Had somebody had caught me early on and said, right, you can do this legitimately, this is how to, dig deep inside yourself, look for the problems, provide the solutions. Okay, all right, you could argue that I might not have had the foresight of prisons and telecoms and stuff like that, but I would have found the next best thing outside the gate.
100%.
As I have since and did before.
I think you actually did mention it. I think you said, wherever there's a problem, there's a business model. You said something like that. That kind of
look for a problem and provide a solution.
Then make a business out of it.
That's right.
Make money.
So my question is, what do you think is missing in the current way that they are rehabilitating? Yeah. What do you think is missing in our current model?
So I mentioned earlier that went over to Norway and looked at their model. They've got the lowest reoffending rates in the world.
Oh yeah, really? I read about that somewhere.
And for good reason. And a lot of it comes back to working with people as people. If you're in prison and you've got, say you're a governor of a prison, and you've got, say, 600 people within your vicinity. If you process these people like criminals and just lock them, unlock them, feed them, shower them, give them an hour's exercise and don't do much more with them, the chances of any of them individuals growing within themselves to become a good neighbour one day are very slim. That's kind of how it's become in the UK a lot of the time. The sad thing is, the Norwegian system that we was looking at actually learned the right way to do things from the UK many years ago, and we just lost the process.
And they're stuck with it.
Yeah. But
That's
their
crazy.
model is more about working with individuals to upskill them and develop them within themselves and address the reasons that put them in prison at the time.
Yeah.
So if somebody, I don't know, for argument's sake, give you an example, has ended up in prison as a result of a drug addiction, rather than just managing the symptom and trying to reduce the amount of drugs being consumed or change them for a different type of drug that's accessed through a different resource, why are you taking the drug? What's so bad in your life that you need to escape from to take those drugs? Let's work with that. Let's go back to the root. And that's what has been missing in the prison system, you know, within recent times. But, you know, we've got a plan to try and do something about that.
Yeah, hopefully it changes, because I feel like you said, treating people as people is, because if you're getting someone, even though they're an offender, whatnot, they're still a person and they still deserve to get their life turned around. And if you're that officer or whoever's in the prison, I don't know how it works, and you're in that, you're dealing with that person, you might as well want to give them the best help as you possibly can, because then the chances of reoffending are lower.
Very slim. Yeah.
So many things play a part, and you don't realise, like, even down to the language we use. So, like you just said, everybody deserves to have their life turned around. It's not up to anyone else to turn someone's life around. It's the individual. But they need the support and the confidence within to say, actually, I'm ready to do it. That's the bit we can do.
Yeah, give that support and help. It's really interesting. And do you think, from your experience, what role does mental health play in the cycle of kind of like offense?
This is one of those topics that's a bit controversial, because I had a very similar conversation this morning with somebody where all of a sudden we start treating people in prison like they're a different species. But actually, they're people regardless. Yeah. So people have problems with mental health inside prison, of course, just as they do outside of prison. Does prison support people with mental health? Not particularly well, because the resources are limited and the environment doesn't lend itself to a very therapeutic setting. So, you know, I'm not really sure what your question is, but does it play a role in people offending? I think it can do at times, just as it can out here. Does it play a role in limiting people's rehabilitation if the right support's not accessed? Is it the focus of all rehabilitation and all offending? Absolutely not. It's life.
Yeah. So, I love how I handled that, actually, especially because you said it was really controversial. I was like, oh, it's about to go down. But it didn't go down.
It didn't go down.
Well, you know, people have got their own perspective on it, haven't they? If you're someone that's experienced mental health issues and struggles, as I have, then you may be very biased in your view upon it. But when things are better and your mind's in a different place, sometimes you look back at the same thing and see it from a totally different angle.
Yeah. But I can't help but notice, because it's written like boldly on your hoodie, if anyone can see. It says life coach. So that means you've decided to take this coaching pathway. You've already kind of illustrated why you chose this pathway, but can you just elaborate a little bit more on why you wanted to work directly as a life coach?
Yeah, so again, through the work that I've done up until this point, I've been quite lucky to have people share their personal journeys with me and be quite honest and open about what's got them into the positions that they've got themselves into. And it's really clear that there's very many people inside and outside of prison that are dragging around some heavy baggage with them and a burden of something that's holding them back from being the best person that they can be. And more often than not, you know, we're talking about ex-offenders here, so let's use that as an example. Stigma, right? So if you've got the stigma as an ex-offender, you know, no one's going to give you a job. You've been to prison. You're a scumbag. Nobody's going to trust you. It's a burden, and it's a setback, and it holds you down. So my concept of life is about development and progression and growing.
Yeah.
And I think, as we were talking about businesses, the failures sometimes are more important than the successes. That goes for life too. So when you are experiencing adversity or you're dragging that heavy baggage around, you see it as a problem. You see it as some kind of handicap. But actually, that's where the real value sits.
That's where your strength is.
So what you got to do is leverage your lived experience, whatever it may have been in life. So my lived experience obviously was what it was, and I now leverage it to help people and support people. So when I go back into the prisons, I'm fortunate enough that people say, well, you know what, he's got half an idea, I'll listen to him. But I could never have that without my lived experience. So for me, a life coach is about helping people be the best version of themselves and working through some of those limiting beliefs and barriers that stop people from doing that, and tackling and addressing some of those pain points in their life. So that's where it really comes from. But more than that, I see a much bigger vision in supporting people that have got lived experience into a position where they can use their lived experience to help the next person. Because society didn't get to where it got to overnight. It happened gradually. And we can reverse engineer that problem. But we've got to start changing the way we look at things and handling it much differently.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Kind of like turning your lived experience to your strength instead of looking at it as a problem that you should run away from, hide from. It's really interesting. I think everyone can kind of benefit from that as well. So I feel like, kind of like just normal people, the average person would have had something that they're not like the most proud of, but instead of kind of leveraging that or leaning into that, they wanna.
It's just, you know, like I said at the beginning, looking for a problem and finding a solution and leveraging everything that's around you. If you're in a prison environment, yes, it's cold. Yes, it's miserable. Yes, it's restrictive and it's a loss of freedom. Or you're in the best place possible to start to investigate why people end up in prison. You know, the market research element of it.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with people at the very, very end of the spectrum. When things go really, really, really wrong, where does it end up?
Yeah.
Sometimes it goes a bit further than that, unfortunately, and that's, you know, something that we can't do a lot about. But if it does stop at the prison marker, you can really have an opportunity to look at how it got to that and what could have been done, what the preventative steps could have been leading up to that.
Yeah.
And I think that really is the role more so of a life coach than it is the role of a prison warden or, you know, a police officer or somebody else. It's a holistic approach from everybody that needs to be deployed. But I think if you've got the time to sit and investigate someone's mindset, you'll find the answers to why they got to where they got to. And you can really learn from that and then leverage it to help the next person.
Yeah. Really interesting, isn't it? Very interesting stuff. And you have a coaching academy?
Yeah, so this year we'll be launching the Cards of Life Training Academy, which does exactly what I've just said. It takes people with lived experience and it takes them on a journey. It's based on a deck of cards. There's 52 cards in a deck. There's 52 weeks in a year. So if you do the full deck, it's 12 months of personal development and a change in mindset.
That's wisdom.
So the concept is, after doing something, they say it takes 30 days to create a habit. So if you do something for 365, it should be well and truly entrenched in you at that point. So if we take somebody on a journey of self-development and progression over 365 days, at the end of it, when they see the benefit of what that's done for them and the impact it's had on their life, they may well be inspired to want to take that forward and choose that as a career path or, you know, a sideline, whatever it may be. So the Cards of Life Academy is designed to teach people the Cards of Life framework and how to deliver it across the 365 days.
That's really
And there's
interesting.
a whole mentorship package around it with a commission structure and many different benefits to make it, you know, a business success. So it's a great thing, and the beauty of it as well is the people that we'll come across and we'll work with through USP myself and my partner run, we can handle and manage those people with the practical skills, you know, and the development to get on in life, whether it be learning a trade or, you know, improving their employability, whatever it may be. Not everybody's going to want to become a life coach, but everybody does deserve a second chance. And we don't want to leave anybody on the bench.
Yeah. Really interesting stuff. How did you, so why a deck of cards?
I think that it all came around a little bit by chance. And with divine timing, things happen for a reason that you don't realise at the time. Being in prison, there's always a deck of cards kicking around on the wing. People are always playing cards. So subconsciously, I guess I'd remembered that this is what you see a lot of. And when I was trying to find a problem to provide a solution, I started to write down the problems that I saw within society, not just within prisons, but in general. And it worked out to be about 52.
No.
And it was like, is this meant to be?
It's a sign.
There's a sign.
Is it? Yeah. Or is it coincidence? Whatever you may think. So 52, okay, refined them, back to the drawing board, scratched it a few times. And then it was like, how do I deliver these 52 interventions in a simplistic format? Because doing the work in the prisons, you know, people would say to you, it's really good what you do, but there's limited resources. You know, it's only you guys doing it. We need to scale this. So then the carpenter, I'm a carpenter, by the way, I didn't mention earlier. The carpenter in me believes in, if you haven't got the right tool for the job, you've got to make that tool. So I thought, if I can design a tool that I can train other people to use, they can replicate what we're doing to some degree, and it can scale. So that, the concept of the cards, you know, there's tarot cards out there, there's all kinds of different training cards, prompt cards and these cards and that cards, but in prison there's playing cards. So I thought, let's take these playing cards and let's work with it. 4 suits represent 4 key areas of life now. Each card is a different topic. Each card, each topic is a week of intensive self-development or training, whether you're a client or a coach. It just really works well. And even the Joker's utilised, because if there's something that we haven't touched upon and we've missed something, the Joker card is the opportunity to write that something in, and then we'll bespoke a program to deal with that, whatever it may be. It's like a triage tool. It simplifies the process.
Wow, that's
Honestly,
that's mind blowing.
I'm never gonna look at cards the same way.
I hope not. And I can recommend a really good book or two as well, because I've actually wrote 2 books, Suit Yourself and Suit Yourself the Coaches Edition, which is, the first one, Suit Yourself, is like the ultimate personal development and self-help guide. It's on Amazon, Apple Books, Kindle. You can get it on the Cards of Life website. I'll give you the details. And then the Coaches Edition is for people that want to progress to that next level. And I'm halfway through the 3rd book, which is all the business mind stuff of how to deliver and make it win.
I was just about to ask you if it's going to be 52 books.
It could be. You never know. Look, at the end of the day, it's a lifelong problem for society. Helping people be the best version of themselves. I'm a young man. I don't have any intention of stopping anytime soon. I've got fantastic support. We've got a great CIC. We can just do this.
Yeah, I mean, keep on doing it. And I was actually like glancing through your books, and I had them with me, and they're on the other side of the camera. So I was going to hold them and then kind of show the camera.
That's all right. We can ask the assistant to bring them over.
here are the books. So, do you wanna hold them?
Yeah, can
feel
do.
like-
So I don't want this to become too promotional, but
I mean, might as well.
suit yourself. The first one. As I say, you can get this on Amazon, or you can go to cardsoflifecoaching.com and buy it directly. You can get an instant digital download, or you can wait a bit longer if you want the physical book. The audio book's in development as well. That'll be coming soon. Same for both editions, and the third when it's released. But for me, had somebody handed me this early on in life, it would have changed the trajectory that I went on, for sure. And we've tried to touch upon all the points that are relevant. So I'll just briefly say that clubs, physical well-being, all the cards within clubs address that. Hearts is interpersonal skills and relationships. Spades is emotional and mental health. And diamonds is intellectual growth. So they're like the 4 pillars for being a well-balanced version of yourself.
Really interesting. Because I was when I was going through it very briefly, I was thinking, like, why are clubs related to physical well-being, for example? But now you explain it, makes sense.
The cards itself, I've got a deck here, but they're the actual tool. So when you work with somebody, sometimes it's difficult to be open and honest with yourself to what you need to address. So if I said to you, look, there's a deck of cards here, all you got to do is split that deck into 2. Left-hand pile of things you feel you need to address. Right-hand pile, we'll put there for the minute, because we might need to come back to them. By the time you've gone through that first pile, you're ready into the second.
Yeah.
It just makes the process a little bit smoother and easier to manage.
Interesting. And I feel like with the work that you do as well, it kind of like makes people, I don't want to say forceful, makes people or helps them be more honest with themselves as well, which is
accountability. It's one of the cards in the book.
Oh wow. Hey guys, you just have to read the book.
I just have to read the book now.
I feel like I have to read the book now. Moving on.
Oh yeah, there's a question. So having done all this, you're an entrepreneur, you have your own books, you're a life coach. What is one key mindset from all your studies, from all your visiting Norway and examining different examining different cycles and just understanding how best to work with people for who they are instead of as inmates? What mindset shift would you want people to have from this entire talk?
I think accountability, we just touched on it, is one of the major ones. Because if you're not holding yourself accountable in this life, and you haven't got the respect for the people around you to hold you accountable, you're in a very dark place. Once you overcome that ego within, and you're unable to truly look at yourself for what you need to do to progress, that's when the magic really happens.
Yeah, I feel like, just like you said, once you let that ego kind of go, then you're like, okay, this is what I need to do, and then it makes life a tad easier.
Again, it's another one of the cards in the book, pride and ego. It looks the same on the surface, but it's very, very different.
And it's hard to get through, especially like
Can be
letting that ego go. I feel like for most of us. But yeah, we're gonna move on to VERU Youth Action, which is one of the projects that we're doing at the moment from Attentive. And I'm gonna ask Swavab the first question just to bring him in a little bit more. So Swavab, as a young person in today's world, what do you think are the main challenges the youth faces that could lead them to violence or risky behavior?
I think the biggest issue that some young people face is not having someone to talk to. It sounds simple, but I know growing up there were a lot of people who suffered from a lot, but they didn't necessarily have anyone or anyone professional that they could speak to. And most importantly, they didn't have anywhere that they could trust. So they might have had something going on at home, but they might not have trusted the school to talk to about it because they felt something else might have happened that they didn't want to. But I feel like a lot of things and issues that young people face and hardships that we go through, it comes down to the fact that we don't really have anyone to vent it to properly and in a safe way. And I feel like especially people who bottle up their emotions and don't have anywhere to talk to or anywhere to make sure they have a healthy mental well-being, that leads them down to, possibly violent decisions. And I feel like, I know this was already touched on the podcast earlier, but I think poverty is definitely a big factor as well. It's definitely true that the more poverty there is in an area, the higher the crime rate. And I think that ultimately comes down to making sure income inequality isn't as bad. But that's obviously a much bigger decision, which requires a lot more work.
Yeah, true say.
Yeah, I completely see that. So, because we are doing this project called Power Youth Action, do you think Power Youth Action can help youth tackle, I hope you can hear me, can help youth tackle violence? Do you think it's going to give them a voice? And if you do, why do you think so?
So yeah, I think the Power Youth Action really ties in with my first point really well, and that being that the youth need somewhere to speak about and they need to have their voice heard, because ultimately our opinions will be carried on for future generations, and so it will really matter. But I think Power Youth Action is really helpful in that instance. It take example me right now. I'm conveying my opinion for other people to hear as well, and I think that's really important for other people my age to be able to do. We have a lot of opinions, and although a lot of older generations dismiss them because we're seen as inexperienced, ultimately that's what will actually help other people our age.
Yeah, and I feel like also as a young person, not only having the platform to express your opinion, but also being validated for your opinion, and not be made seem like you're just an inexperienced person that doesn't know what they're talking about, and you can just go and do your homework.
Go do your homework is crazy.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like that happens a lot, which is what we're trying to change here. So, what kind of change, Swabab, would you like to see for young people in your community?
I think the biggest thing is being able to feel safe. I know this does vary area to area, but I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, for example, they don't feel safe going out, particularly by themselves or at night. And I think there's a lot we can do to sort of tackle this. But I think the biggest thing would definitely be I'd rather see people feel safe outside. Like, I know at times I won't go outside, especially if it's dark or if I'm by myself. And so if there's more trust in the community and knowing that we can go out and be safe, I think that's the biggest thing. Because what does that say about your community if you can't go out and feel safe?
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. And how do you think Attentive can be part of the change?
So a great deal of what Attentive does is definitely promoting reasons why violence isn't the answer. And they deliver a lot of interventions across schools especially. So taking that, for example, I think that helps young people remind themselves that there are other routes, there are other options, and there's helplines you can talk to, and there's youth clubs you can go to, and there's definitely online services you can reach out to if need be. Like, it's not necessary to turn to crime or to make an immoral decision. And we're young people are definitely at an age where it's true that we might not know the best. And so it's best to provide them with resources so that they at least know better in the moment.
Yeah, that reminds me of one of the projects that we were doing that was called Taking the Right Path. It just ended earlier this year. But it was basically a series of workshops where we're going through schools and present the children with a different path to crime and gang crimes, and different activities, what they could do, different helplines, instead of kind of resorting to violence and crime, which I think is a great initiative. Unfortunately, ended.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish these could just keep going, just keep
for
going.
life.
So I know you did mention a couple of things that could help young people stay away from violence. Now my question is, in what way can engaging them in all these different activities, how do you think it could prevent knife crime or like violence in general?
So I think it helps preventing violence in general because creating positive spaces like this is ultimately a good way to help your mental well-being. A lot of people who do take violent decisions, they're not in the right space, especially mentally. They might be suffering from other mental issues. And I think a great deal that the media misses is that young people, especially who take decisions like this, they're suffering from other things in their life, but that's obviously missed. The only thing that you see is the perpetrator and the action being taken. So
That's
I
a
think
great point.
providing spaces like this, take example like a sports club, it's a great way to offer like a secondary path of what you can do in life. You know, it's like if I were to go off and, you know, participate in a basketball club, that it's stress relief. Like that's the first short-term thing I get out of it. But also it's a great space to also make links and make friends and connect with other people. It's ultimately about creating as many spaces as possible for young people where they can create a safe community with themselves and others.
Yeah, I think the great point from what you said is when people just see the perpetrator and nothing beyond that. Yeah.
I think there's a real key part in all of it with the whole offending space. People, you know, there's a lot of emphasis on people joining groups or gangs and this kind of stuff. One of the, again, it's in the book, I'm not promoting the book, but individuality and identity, knowing who you are and who you want to be plays a really key part in this. And that's something that could be taught in schools from very early on.
Yeah. 100%. You guys know who you are. And I think it just comes from doing the work and just looking within yourself, reading the self-help books. I know every time when people say read self-help books, some people are thinking it's cringe or corny. It's not. Just you can just read.
You just got to find the one that resonates. You know, a lot of them can be quite fluffy. You know, I've read a lot of books at this stage, and I didn't enjoy all of them, but I had the resilience to keep going until I found the one that I did.
Yeah. Or at least starting. You know, having that start-up point that okay, I'm gonna pick up a book and read it. Maybe this one.
It just might well be this one.
And then you just read it, and it's a starting point, which is very great to get that journey kicking.
Yeah. I know you did mention that this is something like providing all these different extracurricular activities is something that schools and colleges could collaborate. But how else do you think schools, colleges, communities in general can collaborate to offer alternatives to knife carrying, like probably like besides the clubs?
I think another big thing is also the attitude towards people who carry knives. So the immediate assumption that we take is that they're in the complete wrong and they're out with malicious intent if they're carrying a knife. But a large majority of it comes down to the fact that some young people simply don't feel safe and they carry for protectionism. And although this isn't true, this isn't what they should be doing, they obviously don't know that. And it's not right to immediately reprimand them without not trying to tell them what's better. I think being able to shift the culture towards knife crime and sort of say, hey, we can help out as well. If you come to us, we're not going to just immediately bring the hammer down onto you, because I don't believe that's what should be happening. And I don't think that's right, especially for young people who are at an age where we're incredibly malleable to ideas and impressions, and we might not necessarily take the best decisions. So I think it's necessarily more helping the victim than saying, oh, you're out to do something bad.
Yeah, that does make sense. We are coming to the end of the show, so I'm just going to ask for final comments. I'm going to start with Sova, the last person to speak.
That's all right, yeah.
Do you have any last comments?
No, I think that's it. I think just on the topic of knife crime, the Knife Angel statue was a really good way of trying to improve cultures towards it, because it offered people a chance to actually... Oh, sorry, no, I got it wrong. But it does show the extent of how knife crime affects us, and I think it's a good reminder to people how serious of an issue it is.
Yeah, 100%.
I agree about the Knife Angel, and I'm just sat there, and I'm a little bit older, so perhaps I'm a little bit biased, but I know this is a very controversial thing to say, and this will rustle feathers. I would like to see boxing reintroduced into the curriculum.
Yeah, there's
many years ago, because I feel that as well as the discipline and the ability for people to fight, which I know is not always a positive thing, you live to tell the tale the next day, more often than not. And if you've got the discipline that comes with the training and the confidence that it empowers within you, the chances of you going out and using that to hurt other people are a lot less than what we're seeing with people carrying knives. You've heard it yourself, people carry them for protection.
Yeah, if they had other ways
So
to
then
protect themselves.
in the instant moment, it can all go very wrong very quickly.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Is it the lesser of the two evils? I believe so.
Yeah.
But there's a program called Boxing Saves Lives.
There is.
That the man goes around and has these groups of people that does boxing. But maybe it could be introduced to the curriculum. I don't know. That's a bigger issue.
Yeah, we're just gonna drop them.
That's your next podcast.
We'll discuss that in what, 2 another week?
Yeah,
something like that, because we're on every other week. So yeah, Forever, do you have any last comments?
No, not specifically. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed speaking to Ben and to Swavab. You guys are so insightful. It's so inspiring to see just how you were persistent from prison. You were making business plans. I mean, who does that really? You drew inspiration from the things around you, and you are making this available to other people, and I just think that's amazing. And in no way am I saying this, but this book is going to be amazing.
And just to return that, actually, what you guys are doing is amazing, because to have the platform, to be able to get messages like this out and inspire people to do the right thing. You know, we can do all the work in the world when we come out of prison and write the business plans, but without you guys, who will ever hear about?
Thank you. But yeah, and from myself, just a massive thank you to Ben and Sova for being on today. Very, very insightful episode. We could have gone 4 hours, but we have to wrap up. as we were told. And now our producer is looking at us like, come on, guys, hurry up. So I'm just gonna wish you a very happy evening. If you're watching this in the evening, listen in the evening. So, but yeah, I've been your host, Ruth. This has been Youthology, brought to you by 10th Social Enterprise every 2 Wednesdays of the month from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. My co-host has been
Forever.
On the set, we have
Ben.
And we've also had Swavab on the phone. So what do you want to say? Bye.
Bye guys, thank you for having me today.
Thank you. And that's a wrap.